Let's go through some of the stories in a bit more detail. Andrew Eborn is barrister, broadcaster and futurist and the president of Octopus TV. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Rosie. It is always a delight to join you.
So tell me, what do you think about these new proposals, front page of the Times, that if your tenants cause problems, they're causing nuisance, the neighbours have complained, they could be given eviction orders within 2 weeks?
Well, this is all part of Rishi Sunak's plan to address the antisocial behaviour which is plaguing our society. So you're right, landlords will be able to evict tenants who are disruptive to neighbours. He's also talking about these so-called staycation party houses where people will rent something for B&B and you have no sort of rights if you're being disturbed at 3 o'clock in the morning or not preparing for the Rosie Wright show. What happens on that sort of basis, he's going to increase the sort of penalties, if you like, but also have a new registration scheme for these holiday lets, and therefore this would enable people to have action against both the guests and also the owners. And he's talking about this sort of whole strong community, if you like, built on values, which is what we want. And it's not just about these Airbnb parties, but he's also talking about the use of nitrous oxide, the so-called laughing gas. He's going to increase the penalties for that. That's going to be going up to 2 years in jail as a maximum. And you might recall these are these little silver canisters which basically are polluting all sorts of public areas and so on and so forth. And there's a huge uptake in laughing gas use, so he's going to address that. He's also increasing the idea of spot fines for littering and graffiti. The penalty for that's going to go up to 500 quid. And also fly tipping is going up to £1,000. And in addition to those, this whole raft of measures, he's going to give the police more powers to move on beggars. Now, all of this is to do with this whole mission about addressing anti-social behaviour. And I think a lot of people will be yeeping in delight that this is finally being addressed.
And some people might say, things like laughing gas, that was a really big problem 2-3 years ago, but hasn't been so much of an issue. Are the government promising to crack down on things that have already slightly been dealt with?
Well, it's always a very good point, and as you rightly say, always question everything. It's like saying, well, inflation will halve when we know that it's going to get significantly better anyway. But there's no problem. He likes to be the Prime Minister who always under-promises and over-delivers. And the fact that we will see big differences could be very, very interesting. And one of the papers today talks about the massive difference it will make, for example, around carnival time and the huge clear-up that's required for looking at this laughing gas canisters. As a result, they require special treatment because of the way they have to be handled. So we will hopefully see changes. He can claim it as a victory, even though we might be on the road to victory already.
Phil's made me laugh from Cambridge. He says, if only the Tories had been so keen on shutting down parties when they were having them themselves in Downing Street. Front page of the Telegraph, you mentioned inflation there. According to Andrew Bailey, it's all you early retirees.
Well, all us early retirees, I don't know about that, not nearly old enough, Rosie. But the principle, and it's been addressing this sort of side, and you'll recall that it wasn't so long ago when we were discussing Jeremy Hunt incentivising people to get back to work. And what's happened is the workforce has shrunk by about 0.4% since the start of the pandemic. And this is being a big, big problem. People are living longer, and obviously it's a drain on the economy if you're not feeding into that economy. So they've now got rid of the lifetime cap on pensions to drive people back. Andrew Bailey's come out and warn about this, is this retiring early is to blame for the increase in rates and inflation, and it needs to be addressed. The big thing as well, I talk to a lot of doctors on a regular basis, is that people need a mission in life. And the reality is if people retire early, what tends to happen is the mortality for those people who do retire early goes down if you don't have activities, talk about getting people off the golf course and so on and so forth. So there needs to be a purpose in life. And what I always say is the advance of things like artificial intelligence, of robotics and so on and so forth. Many people are going to have to find alternative jobs anyway, because we're going to be replaced by robots and artificial intelligence and so on and so forth. And I think we need to look at that as a whole workforce. But generally, people are living longer, and if people are not paying into the economy, then clearly it is an issue, and it's quite right for Andrew Bailey to raise it.
You could go on a 3-year-long cruise. There's details of this that launches in the Times. If you can afford it, I think it's £73,000. This autumn, hundreds of passengers will get this round-the-world cruise. Yes, I think 3 years might be a little long for a holiday. Let's return to the front page of the Times, and it's a really troubling story for parents, particularly with children that they've allowed to play video games who've become really addicted to them. Hundreds of children are undergoing NHS treatment because not only are they addicted to these games, they're then being violent towards their families.
No, it's a big, big issue, and anybody with children of any age will know that you try and interrupt somebody whilst they're gaming, all hell can break loose. And it's quite worrying statistics. There's the first NHS Centre for Gaming Disorders. That was set up. They had 745 patients since it launched in October 2019, and that includes 327 last year. Also, the police have been called, they say regularly, quite a worrying quote, regularly to family homes because of children being aggressive when parents are trying to take away or cut down the amount of time that they're gaming. So it is a very, very serious issue. And also gaming disorder has been classified as a mental health condition by the World Health Organization as long ago as 2018. Anybody, and there'll be lots of your listeners around the country at the moment sympathising with this. It is a real issue. It does need to be addressed, and it's quite right for the Times to put it on their front page.
Yeah, you can read more about it, obviously, in the paper today. Most of the papers have got some of the extraordinary details of the trial Gwyneth Paltrow is currently in, the retired doctor who's suing her over that crash they had in 2016 at a ski resort. Well, he said, whilst giving evidence, that he heard a blood-curdling scream before being hit from behind. Some of the details, we sort of look on in awe, I think, in the UK at the sort of the detail that we get from these US trials that involve high-profile celebrities. The trial's been extraordinary.
It has been extraordinary, and it's television. People love to watch these long trials. We were spoiled last year, if you like, by having the daily dose of good old Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And we started televising trials over here. You'll know that for criminal proceedings, they're now broadcasting the judge's sentencing remarks because justice to not just be done but seen to be done. So we
don't get anything like this kind of intrusion, do we?
Not yet. No, this is wall-to-wall coverage of the case of Terry Sanderson, who's 76. He's suing. He started off by suing for $3.1 million because he was trying to go for punitive damages. But the judge ruled that he can't do that. So he's trying to go for $300,000. He basically sounds an awful skiing accident. He had 4 ribs which were cracked. He had head trauma and so on and so forth. And there's a dispute. Recollections may vary. There's a dispute as to what's happening. Gwyneth herself is suing for $1, counter-suing for that sort of side, which is obviously just a fraction of what apparently the $8,800 she paid to go on this skiing holiday. But it is dramatic and it's traumatic for all of those involved. But it is wall-to-wall television.
And whether you've been watching it or not, the details are in the papers. Andrew Eborn, thank you very much for joining me this morning, barrister, broadcaster and president of Octopus TV, to go through the day's stories.